Okay, so once again, continuing on with this, this is the intro to OSHA number 4. Do make sure that you fill out that complaint. That gives a good pause area for you to do that, and that is in your workbook. That'll be part of your workbook when we look at it. The next thing I want to point out is number 5, and this is actually handout number 5. It has to do with whistleblowers, and this is your right as an employer, as an employee, to be free from any type of retaliation for exercising any safety or health rights when we look at it. And so we should be able, as employees, to say, hey, there's something wrong, without fear of any type of punishment. If you look at this sheet, when we look at it, the whistleblower laws, these are all enforced by OSHA. But there's several different other agencies that are on there. You can see the first one that's listed is OSHA. You have 30 days to actually contact OSHA if you feel like you've been punished or anything with regard to saying, hey, there's something wrong out there, or filing a complaint. The next one you can see on down through there, there's Clean Air Act, there's Toxic Substance Control Act, there's a lot of different things. So some of this is up underneath the EPA as well as other agencies. And so OSHA is the one who controls this with regard to whistleblower. It's just a different sector of OSHA. When you look at it, it does say that the unfavorable personnel actions that are listed down here are firing, laying off, blacklisting, all of those types of things. And so you can see that some of those are there. But it does tell you how to file a complaint. It does tell you some other information on the other side, and I'll let you read through that. But I do want to mention that it is called the Whistleblower Act, and once again, it is called 11C, within parentheses is how that is listed. Now, with regard to the Whistleblower Act, just to kind of point out, they've been keeping track of this for quite some time. With OSHA, some of the information is dated. It's dated farther back, and so it's a little bit harder to how do I say this, to kind of get up to date current information. So a lot of times we're a year, 2 years behind. But you can see here that in OSHA, this kind of started in 2005, and we can see that it escalated. And essentially what happened is that in President Obama's era, he said, we will prosecute with regard to this, and that was one of the top priorities of OSHA during that administration. Not to say that it's not a top priority now, but you can see that there are several cases that are received, and most of those are going to be under OSHA, the Occupational Safety and Health Act, compared to some of the other acts that are out there. This is the EPA, you can see, and those types of things. So just to kind of mention that. Now, under handout 6, when we look at that, and essentially it will tell you some information on how to refuse to work with regard to saying, hey, this place is unsafe, or I'm going to get sick if I work here, that type of thing. This has to be within good faith. And if you look under the section where it says refusing to work is protected if, and all of these conditions must be met. I'm not going to read those for you, but all of those. So it's this and this and this and this. And so there's 4 conditions that have to be met in order for this to be considered unsafe, and that you are refusing to work if you've done these things. The next part, the section over, on the right-hand side, it says conditions are met, and the next step is you do need to ask your employer to correct the hazard, ask your employer for other work. So it has to be, those are the steps that happen, and I'm not reading through those as well. And so then down at the bottom, it says if and then. So if you still believe, when you have already done everything that's above, that you are working in unsafe or unhealthful work conditions, then this is what you can do. You can leave your workplace. And so essentially that's what it says. I did go ahead and put the number down here. It's 29 CFR 1977.12, and this is under the enforcement area. So I did want to mention that to you. It's kind of interesting, but you just can't pretty much say, oh, this is unsafe and I'm not going to work here, and then just leave. You have to go through specific steps. So when we see that some of those cases, and remember I told you that OSHA has called before and said, hey, we have a claim here and this is what they said, but they're not saying that they contacted you, they're not saying that they told you those types of things, then that would kick out the case a lot of times, even though it might be true. They may not investigate it as fully as they would if they had, hey, I went through these steps and this is specifically what happened. So once again, going through and making sure that you have gone through all these steps and it's listed on the complaint form saying that you did this is very important. So being very specific and having those details and dates and that type of thing, once again, is super important. Right, so some of the jobs that are in safety, just because you're not a safety manager and you have gone through our environmental and safety management degree here at Pittsburgh State University or another university with a like degree, doesn't mean that you can't be a safety professional. And so there's different types of names that are out there, and I've just kind of listed some of these here, and you can go out online, you can look for safety coordinator, you can look for safety assistant, a lot of different things, but they also say EHS or HSE or SHE or those types of, but typically it's safety, health, and environment. Those three words are kind of synonymously used and kind of mixed around depending on what is more prominent with your job. But those are some of the jobs that are out there with regard to safety. Some of the responsibilities is just kind of knowing what hazards are out there and kind of being able to do something about that, doing some inspections or audits that are out there, knowing some information with regard to fire protection and how to eliminate hazards that are maybe due to fire, also doing inspections and having some systems, sprinkler systems and that type of thing. The regulatory compliance is really important with regard to safety, knowing that you know those laws or at least know where to look those up. And once again, I said I'm not going to make you memorize any of the standards or anything like that. I don't know them, so I'm not going to make you do that. But kind of knowing where to look those up and being able to readily get that information and making sure that you're thorough when you're doing that with regard to it. Also, to recognizing any types of noise or chemical hazards that are out there, biological hazards, radiation with regard to an employee health, and then ergonomics. And that's a whole class we teach here with regard to ergonomics and how ergonomics fits into the workplace. And it's kind of an interesting class. I like it. Hazardous materials management, we also teach a class with regard to that. It's dealing with those hazardous materials and what to do with those. And then accident investigation, that's part of another class that we talk about. What to do with regard to an accident, how to handle it, what information are you looking for, how do you record that, all of that type of thing. Environmental protection, as I said, that a lot of times it's environmental, safety, and health. Those three things are put together, so some of those can be in that job that you're looking for. Even if you're just called a safety professional, that may be part of your job, and it's just looking at with regard to the air, land, and water, that type of thing. Record keeping, maintaining the information. If you're an HR professional, this may be part of your job. With regard to maintaining those OSHA logs and that type of thing. We'll get into those later. How long to keep that information, where to keep that information, all of that. And then training. I'm not sure in your companies who trains your employees, but when you start looking at it, how do you get that information across to them, what they're supposed to be doing, what they're not supposed to be doing with regard to safety. But when we look at it, we have to have knowledge that's all over the area. And just to kind of know what we're supposed to be doing, where to look that up, that type of thing. So we have that. So I just want to mention this is the OSHA website, and you just OSHA.gov, and I'll say that quite a bit. To go through this, you can kind of look at about OSHA. When we look at it, you can go over here to your state plans if you were wanting to know where that is, or your regional office. You can even work for OSHA if you want to, which would be a good job. These are their worker rights and information, and this is where employers can find some information. Now, if we just wanted to jump to the standards and we knew exactly what that was, we could go to the laws here, and is something called standard interpretations. I'll go through that in another video. Enforcement, these are the enforcement programs. When we look at this is like the national emphasis programs, the NEPs, and nationally this is what they're looking for: combustible dust, hazardous machinery, the amputation, they're pretty big on that right now, process safety management, that type of thing. And then regionally they can set some information down. In Region 7, you can see here that electrical hazards, Nebraska has grain handling industries, that type of thing. So you can kind of look in that, and so it just depends where that's at. So let me go back here. Here's the enforcement programs. And once again, national emphasis. We can jump to construction here. We can actually go to different topics. This is where the information is. If you want just a short publication or an information with regard to something, you could go to publications and search it here. You can search it however you want to. These are some popular. If we wanted to talk about emergency preparedness, we could go here, and these are all the things that are listed. So there's a lot of that. This data and statistics, that's where the information is with regard to, you can search a lot in here. And then if you needed assistance in training, you could do it here, or find out how to get training in your local area. Another thing that's real helpful is this A to Z index. We could go to, let's go to machine guarding here, and we can look at machine guarding. This here is talking about the standards, and so it is listed under 1910, which is general industry again. Here it's in 1917 in marine, longshoring, and then 1926 in construction, and then down here in agriculture. So do make sure that you are staying within this area. If you are looking up some information, if you've chosen a topic with regard to forging machines, that you would look under 1910-218, that's specifically related to that. And so that I do want to point out. So if we do Google, and I am going to just, in their search engine up here, machine guarding, and go ahead and do that. Just note that you may not be in 1910 when you bring this up, because it brings up everything with regard to machine guarding. So it could be in any type of longshore. It can be someplace else. So just be real careful about that when you're looking at it. The next thing is the statistics. I went ahead and put those there, but I just showed you that. The OSHA book, which is an actual book that's out there, and then the safety video. So let me see if this plays. I did change something, and the video is not going to play. Okay, so it's the volume. So I'll put that out there for you too. And in the meantime, before recording the next one, I'll figure out how to do that. But with that, this is the fourth and last video with regard to intro to OSHA. And I do want to mention that there is standalone PowerPoints out there. I'm not going to voice over all of them, just the main ones, and then the others you can just go to and look at those for the information. So those are out there for you too. But with that, this is done, and I will see you next week. Thank you.